She also challenged the young guns over at the lower house to a drug test.
The ninth hearing of the House Quad Committee, which by the way is still going on about 10 hours in, drew a mix of old and new resource persons and witnesses.
But the one man that the inquiry wanted most was not there, and that is the former President Rodrigo Duterte. Lawmakers are letting Digong's absence slip for now in hopes that he will attend the next inquiry.
The spotlight then turned to an old enemy of Duterte's, former Senator Laila de Lima, who, like Royina Garma, gave a pretty damning testimony. Marian Enriquez has tonight's big story.
Parang naggagayahan lang ang mag-amang Duterte. Ang daming sinasabi kapag hindi under oath o wala sa tamang lugar. Pero kapag pinatawag na sa formal na pagdinig, nag-uugaling pusit na pareho at ang dami ng rason para huwag dumalo.
Almost at the onset of the Quad Committee's ninth hearing, lawmakers expressed frustration over the absence of former President Rodrigo Duterte, who the day before already sent word he's skipping the inquiry. Through his lawyer, Duterte said that while he is keen to participate in the joint panel's hearing, he's not feeling well, and the invitation came on such short notice.
Hindi pwedeng sabihin na short notice at masama ang pakiramdam at kailangan ng pahinga. Ang mga pamilya nga ng mga biktima, kahit matanda na, andyan po, takot ba siya na harapin ng taong bayan?
After some disagreement, Quadcom leaders agreed to excuse him without requiring a medical certificate. He is, after all, 79 years old. But there is a warning. ACT Teachers Party List Representative Franz Castro wants to cite Digong in contempt if he is still a no-show at the next hearing.
Hindi ho natin siya binibigyan ng special treatment. But in this particular case, in deference to him being the former president, I would like to ask for your understanding to extend a little bit of the courtesy that is due to him.
One resource person who did turn up today is former Senator Laila de Lima. As head of the Commission on Human Rights between 2008 and 2010, de Lima was relentless in investigating Duterte's drug war. That's when he was still Davao City Mayor between 1988 and 1998 and 2001 up to 2016, the year he became president. Through a matrix, de Lima detailed how Duterte's now infamous Davao Death Squad, or DDS, operated. The group supposedly offered 15,000 pesos for every drug suspect killed, 10,000 pesos to the assassin, and 5,000 to their police handler. According to de Lima, also a former justice and senator, Duterte was known by the alias Superman, and he was the source of every cent of the reward money.
Their safe house was located inside the Nabelcom compound in Barangay San Pedro, Davao. After the summary execution of targeted victims, the DDS members would regroup at their safe house and divide the reward. During that time, MRRD sometimes personally gave out the kill orders and the reward money directly to the assassins themselves.
MRRD stands for Mayor Rodrigo Roa Duterte. De Lima said the nanlaban concept originated from Davao and was invented by the DDS itself.
To answer your question, Your Honor, I have to point out that the nanlaban concept actually originated in Davao and invented by the DDS. So it's not something new. There may be fewer cases then, kasi karamihan nga is the riding in tandem, mga vigilante killings as induced by then Mayor Rodrigo Duterte. But there were also specific cases na ganon, because the nanlaban concept actually originated from the DDS operations.
De Lima was arrested in 2017 during Duterte's term and spent more than 6 years in jail for trumped-up drug charges that were later on dismissed. Most of her accusers recanted their statements, including retired Colonel Jovi Espenido. But Espenido's official recantation came only today, several years too late. According to him, he was just dragged into the narrative to implicate De Lima in the drug trade. Hence, the false testimonies from him and self-confessed drug lord Kerwin Espinosa.
I am one also a victim Sali-sali lang sa lista ng drugs, nilagyan pa ng high value target si Espinido. So, kaya ako magsasabi din na siguro yung mga lista hindi totoo yun kasi ako nga biktima sa mga sinungaling nilagay ni Senator Bato.
Senator Bato de la Rosa has refused to attend any Quadcom hearing. As for Duterte, he will be invited back to the lower house's next hearing on October 24. And if he still doesn't show up, it's up to the lawmakers to decide how much courtesy to extend to him. For News 5, Marian Enriquez, we are One News.
In the upper chamber, Senate President Chis Escudero says Senator Bato de la Rosa confirmed to him that former President Rodrigo Duterte will attend their hearing next week, October 28, Tuesday. Escudero says Duterte will be treated with courtesy during the proceedings.
Siyempre, dahil dati siyang Pangulo, inaasahan ko na sa parte ng mga miyembro ng Senado, bibigyan siya ng karampatang paggalang. Hindi lamang bilang tao, hindi lamang bilang Pilipino, pero bilang dating Pangulo ng ating bansa.
Okay, that is Monday, October 28. Now, other resource persons invited include retired Police Colonel Royina Garma, former National Police Commissioner or NAPOLCOM Commissioner Edilberto Leonardo, former Senator Laila de Lima, alleged drug lord Kerwin Espinosa, as well as the families of drug war victims. Senators Bato de la Rosa and Bongo will be there too, and like any other senator, will be given the chance to ask questions and answer accusations.
Marahil magandang pagkakataon din yan para mabigyan sila ng pagkakataon. Mabigay yung kanilang panig sa isyong ito. Dahil nga, bugso ng interchamber courtesy ay hindi nila kita kailangan dumalo sa
Well, today reporters had their first chance to ask President Bongbong Marcos what he thought of his vice president's incendiary comments last week. Marcos took the high road and did not say anything. But at a separate event, Vice President Sara Duterte was interviewed again and continued to lash out, and this time challenged House lawmakers to a drug test. Ria Fernandez has that story.
President Bongbong Marcos was with the First Lady when he attended today's event, the 123rd anniversary of the Philippine Coast Guard. When the media caught up to them for a chance interview, he was immediately asked about Vice President Sara Duterte's tirades against him last Friday.
Sir, the Vice President said that you don't know how to be a president. Comment that you don't know how to become a president.
As you saw, the president simply smiled and walked away, as did First Lady Liza Araneta Marcos. But their son, Ilocos Norte 1st District Representative Sandro Marcos, is fed up. In a long statement released earlier today, the lawmaker said that he has been holding his tongue all this time out of respect for the vice president, but he can no longer stay silent while she threatens to exhume a former president and behead an incumbent one. He went on. Her bizarre temper tantrum has been condemned by a nation horrified from such displays of insensitivity towards the dead and cruelty to the living. Congressman Marcos ended with, going ballistic was perhaps the self-therapy she prescribed for herself, but she crossed the line. May she find a peace of mind and mental clarity that seems to be eluding her. The first person in the Marcos family who spoke up about the issue was Senator Amy Marcos's son, Ilocos Norte Governor Matthew Manoto. The vice president gave the keynote address at the Philippine Business Conference and Expo earlier today, after which she was also cornered by reporters. She said she understood why the young Marcoses called her out, but she said she got angry this time because people close to her are being harassed.
And ngayon, nagalit ako kasi sa paghabol-habol nila sa akin, yung mga kasamahan ko, hinahabol din nila. Excuse ko na lang, let's give them privacy. But one is already in depression, one is already contemplating suicide, one is in the hospital, may isa hindi nakakatulog.
Vice President Duterte also said she doesn't think she attacked Senator Amy Marcos in her fiery press conference last week. But after that, she texted Amy, who had turned cold.
She was cold, malamig. And then meron siyang sinabihan ng common friend namin na naiinis siya sa akin at kay BBM. And then sinabihan ko yung common friend namin, sabihin mo sa kanya, huwag siya mainis sa akin at kay BBM. Mainis siya kay Lisa at kay Martin.
Duterte also accepted calls by lawmakers for her to undergo a mental health exam. but only if the so-called Young Guns group in the lower house undergo a drug test too.
Game tayo. I will call that neuropsychiatric exam. Pero, let us make this an election issue. Yung Young Guns, I am sure kasi young sila, magpapa-re-elect pa yan. They are running as re-electionists. So, ang gagawin natin, 2 tests sa akin. Kasi sinasabi nila, ano daw ako, unstable daw ako. Paningin ko naman sa kanila, unstable din sila. 'Di ba? I will do 2 tests. Neuropsychiatric exam and drug tests. Pero dapat lahat ng mga young guns na kandidato, lahat ng mga congressional candidates ay magpa-drug test.
Duterte also insisted they do the drug test immediately.
Hindi pwedeng 3 months after ha, kasi hindi magdodroga yan ng 3 months, tapos na yung testing nila.
So anytime?
So dapat
Ngayon na. Ngayon na. Magpa-drug test tayong lahat at dagdagan ko ang sa akin neuropsychiatric exam.
Shortly after, the Young Guns issued a group statement saying they accept her challenge, but they countered with their own condition. They want the vice president to testify under oath before the House Blue Ribbon Committee investigating alleged fund misuse within the Office of the Vice President and the Department of Education. House Assistant Majority Leader and Zambales Representative J. Kong-hun said, "We are more than willing to take the drug test and psychiatric exam, but we will not allow her to divert the real issue, which is the allegations of fund misuse and graft and corruption against her." For News 5, Ria Fernandez, We Are One News.
Vice President Sara Duterte is not taking criticism from the lawmakers sitting down. She hit right back at them over their statement saying her press conference last week was a diversionary tactic.
Well, it's a tie. Kasi ang ginagawa nila is a diversion from the nothingness that is this country is undergoing. This ginagawa nila is a diversion sa kagutuman, sa kahirapan, sa taas ng presyo, at sa kawalan ng mga Pilipino. Ginagawa niyo akong diversion, gagawin ko din kung ano yung ginagawa niyo. Diba?
Ma'am, ba't the inflation rate
Wala.
is bumababa?
Talo na kayo. Wala na. Kahit na anong gagawin nyo, talo na kayo.
Duterte also slammed Justice Secretary Boying Remulla. The feud began when Remulla was asked what he thought about Sara threatening to dig up Marcos Sr.'s remains and throwing them into the West Philippine Sea. Remulla said that was very disturbing and that they are looking at the legal aspects of it to see if she violated any principles. And today, Vice President Sara Duterte said Secretary Remulla does not know the law.
Unang-una, ipagdasal natin ang Pilipinas dahil we have a Secretary of Justice na hindi alam ang batas. There is a big difference between talking about desecration of a body and actually desecrating a body. Talking about desecration of a body is not desecration of the dead. Dapat sana siguro, as a lawyer, maintindihan niya yon kagad. But apparently, sabi nga ng iba, pag mabilis ka, meron talagang mga mabagal ang pick-up. Kasi ito si Remulla, nandun siya sa legal desecration of the dead. Sabi ko nga kanina, di ba? Talking about desecrating a body is not desecration of the dead. It is not illegal. It is taboo.
In contrast with the temperature of that, the Vice President also confirmed that the TikTok video of her dancing is real, saying she did it for a friend who is a content creator. Some people thought that this viral video was generated by artificial intelligence.
Totoo yun, di AI yung TikTok video Ako yun. 3 videos yan. Sabi nung kasama ko, sabi niya, content creator na ako. Sabi niya, pwede mo bang tulungan yung account ko? Oo. Well, hindi ko alam kung paano kumita, pero sinabi niya, content creator ako, kasama namin yun. Pwede mo ba ako tulungan? Sabi niya, i-promote mo yung account ko. And then sinabihan ko siya, anong kailangan ko gawin? Sure, sabi ko, maliit na bagay. Anong kailangan ko gawin? Sabi niya, sumayaw ka lang. So tinuruan nila ako, and then sumayaw.
There's a lot of debate between GCs if this is real.
If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have seen that video
Oo,
on Sunday.
pinuntahan ko talaga at Inday Me na yun. Tapos nung nakita ko, kasi yung isa, yung pangatlo, may boses si VP Sara. Tapos tinignan ko yung mukha, hindi naman nagbo-blur yung parang, hindi naman siya parang AI. So the other question was, is this an impersonator?
Yeah, she does have a
Good
really
password
good impersonator.
Hindi kasi parang pumayat siya, tapos pero may sugat pa rin dito. So ina-analyze ng mga tao. Ngayon, confirmed na.
That is her.
She's not afraid.
No.
I also thought it was a diversionary tactic, but apparently
Hey,
she
what
does
happens on
TikToks.
TikTok should stay on TikTok.
She's not running in the midterms, just to clarify.
All right, we're going to be taking a quick break, but right after that, we will be sitting down with ICC Assistant Counsel Attorney Kristine about the revelations and testimonies at today's hearing on Duterte's drug war. Don't miss that.
Welcome back. You're still watching the big story here on One News.
Circling back to our top story, the ongoing hearing at the lower house on the Duterte administration's drug war. And our first guest tonight was actually there in person at the hearing earlier. We have attorney Kristine. She's ICC Assistant to Counsel. Thanks for rushing here from Quezon City. We appreciate your time and effort so much, Attorney Conti.
You're welcome and lovely to be here in person finally.
I know. You had to cut out early from the hearing, but already there were a lot of big revelations as well, beginning with former Senator Laila de Lima, who confirmed the existence of a reward system, which she investigated when she was CHR, Commission on Human Rights Commissioner as well. But for you, what were your big takeaways from today?
Well, from today, one is, of course, the connection of the DDS, the Davao model. That was what was raised previously, that the national or nationwide drug war was patterned after the Davao model. So actually, for the general public, it is a big revelation how the drug war or the DDS model operated. For some of us, though, we have had access to this information before, but the detail that Senator De Lima came up with today, and for her to say that she was even volunteering to give her personal notes, investigation notes. So that's important for us. And if these notes are to be supplied to the congressmen, then I think they would have a better understanding of, this is a clearer picture actually of what's happening. And I dare say it is coming closer to what the ICC is investigating even. If before we were talking about killings during Duterte was president, now we're also talking about killings when Duterte was mayor. So that's key for us. And then, of course, another revelation would have been the killings of individual persons, now the mayors in Batangas and Cavite, which are being, I don't know, it's like a ping-pong story already. He said, she said. Na, sasabihin ng isa, ito yung pumatay. Ah, hindi ako.
Yeah, correct.
So we'll see, but at least we're shedding light into these individual killings, which maybe before we thought were unconnected or unrelated. Now we're seeing it's all part of the plan.
After the sworn statement of Reina Garma, did more witnesses come up and have the courage to approach the ICC body? Because I heard you call out for information. Parang meron ka sinabing website, no?
Yeah.
Ano bang website yun?
OTP link.
Mas marami ba ang nagkaroon ng tapang?
Well, I don't have access to the OTP link. It's the Office of the Prosecutor. But I must have to note that Reina Garma, I'm still confirming, Reina Garma has not expressed publicly her intention to be an ICC witness.
So she's
It's Kerwin Espinosa.
So she's not yet part.
Yes, maybe we're taking things too fast, kumbaga.
Okay.
So we'll see how the ICC will take
Can
this
her statement in the hearing be handed over to the ICC
Yes,
as
actually.
evidence?
Yeah, well, here's the thing. It could be taken as information that she said it, but when it comes to trial, the question of truth comes into play. And to figure something out as truth, kailangan mong ma-cross-examine. Kailangan mong, well, it could be by deposition or her live testimony in the ICC at The Hague when trial begins. But right now, as proof that she said that there was this kind of reward system, that there was this entire plan, the ICC can take that already as information.
What about Kerwin? You mentioned Kerwin. Now, just watching, events unfold through the years, Kerwin said this, he takes it back, then he says another thing. Will that be factoring in his could be perceived as being wishy-washy?
Yeah, actually, certainly. The more statements you have out in public, whether written or verbal, oral testimony, the more, so to speak, bala against you. Eventually, when you take the stand finally in the ICC, they will take that as, they will pull out the inconsistent statements, they will pull out the contradictory statements, and discredit you essentially as a witness. So that would be a risk if Kerwin Espinosa is to be taken to the ICC. But of course, we would have to weigh what testimony, or what's the weight of the testimony that he will give. To be frank, he said nothing about the system. Because he's not per se an insider. He's not someone who was one of the perpetrators. He was one who was made an instrument, kumbaga. Kasi he was asked by Senator Bato to come up with lies against Senator De Lima.
Right.
So that's one. But he was not one of those who perpetrated the killings. So we'll have to see how the ICC would stack that up against the other witnesses as well.
Attorney, earlier this year at a PCIJ conference, you said what the ICC prosecutors are looking for are patterns. In a sense, it's less important how they were killed, but more important who pulled the trigger and whether the killing was similar to the others. That's what they're trying to establish, you said.
Yes, precisely.
This is the 9th hearing of the Quadcom. Do you think they have enough to establish a clear pattern of killings at this point?
Well, I think so. But of course, it depends on which court you're going to present this information to. Again, for the Quadcom, it would be enough. Kasi they're establishing for the public and for eventual legislation. For eventual legislation that these kinds of laws would be remedial. Right now, the issues center around presumption of regularity of duty, how police could be taken to account if they do this or do that, and so forth, and witness protection.
Qualifying heinous crimes.
Yeah, heinous crimes, and then, defining extrajudicial killings. So
that's
that's
a good
important.
one.
Yeah. But then that's it. But for the ICC, it might not be enough. For one, they would have to qualify the witnesses as their own witnesses, present them in court, and kumbaga, point to the actual perpetrator. So the ICC looks at the most responsible, and I think we still need a little bit more that points to Duterte as the perpetrator.
So to be clear, what we're getting, all the material we've gotten is enough for local legislation, for House,
For creation
for
of-
lawmakers to
yeah.
amend or create legislation, but it isn't enough yet to establish a clear pattern as far as the international prosecutors are concerned.
Yes, but again, we have to take that in consideration of what the ICC already has. So separately, independently, it already has information. We know of two already who have come forward and said that, we're ICC witnesses. And that's Matobato and Las Cañas. So let's see how that would stack up with the other witnesses that the ICC might have already.
Speaking of laws, former Senator Laila de Lima mentioned a law a while ago. We do have a law on heinous crimes, which is RA 9851, Philippine Act on Crimes Against International Humanitarian Law, Genocide, and Other Crimes versus Humanity. So, yung willful killing, extermination, enslavement, etc., is punishable by reclusion perpetua. So, we do have that in our law. At nakasulat din doon sa batas na yon, Section 17, in the interest of justice, relevant Philippine authorities may dispense with the investigation or prosecution of a crime punishable under this act if another court or international tribunal is already conducting an investigation or prosecution of such crime. So sinabi niya na bago pa tayo naging miyembro ng ICC, may batas na tayo na nag-recognize sa international tribunal or another court. Is this saying that? Am I correct in my interpretation? And pangalawa, I mean, can we also investigate if not in the ICC, using this law?
Yeah, so two things. So one, actually, the context of the creation of this law was that there was already talk of the ICC as early as 1998. And in fact, the Philippines was one of those who participated in the drafting of the Rome Statute.
Right.
We were so keen on it, we sent several experts, including the one who eventually became a judge before the ICC. So we were so keen on it. Problem was, I think they got into a little bit of discussion. So 2000, ERAP signs accession to the Rome Statute. He agrees. But as president, he has to pass it on to, because it's a treaty, he has to pass it on to Senate. Senate only ratified or agreed to it 2011. So in the interim, from 2000 to 2011, we were, actually 98 even, we were in line with the program dito sa Rome Statute, which is why the local law already recognizes the court and other international tribunals. Now, here's the thing. Can we have, at the same time, two different investigations here and there? Theoretically, yes, but one has to defer to the other. And, I mean, given this provision, and also there's a provision in the ICC, in the Rome Statute, which says, complementarity only if the local government, the domestic government, is not working on it. The
only
thing
one.
Is, well, yes, it's a court of last resort. But the thing is, when it started, there wasn't any in the Philippines. Nauna si ICC. So siya ang may, kumbaga, right of first refusal, kumbaga.
Ganun lang ba yun, attorney? Or is it, you have been talking about this, no? Yung parang, if they deem that the local justice system is insufficient, then they can also step in. So if they're not happy with, the results or the turnout or progress of the investigations, they can also step in and start their own.
And it's not exactly kumbaga happy with the, they have to look at the, satisfied more of that na, that this is a substantial investigation into the very things that they are investigating. Kasi naisip na nila yan eh. In fact, even yung pag-exit. So the withdrawal, they put qualifiers. When you withdraw, only after 1 year will it be effective. when you leave and there is a pending investigation, you have to continue cooperating with the investigation or any matter under consideration of the court. So, supposedly, kapag may kumagat na isa, whichever one, dun na magtutuloy-tuloy. And to be clear, there is no investigation yet in the Philippines.
Until now.
Until now.
So yung maliliit na crimes lang, isa-isa lang.
Isa-isa lang.
Hindi yan
Murder,
counted.
homicide. And in fact, if we're looking at the Barayuga case, etc., the Dapico case, wala pang ang kaso eh. And we don't even know if they will eventually be filed. We've heard during the Quadcom, DOJ, investigate this, investigate that. But there's no report, there's no actual result
The
yet.
DOJ told us that they have started the case build-up on the Barayuga case.
In fact, at the previous hearing, I think they said, oh, we're waiting for the signature of the wife.
Yeah.
But then
okay.
that's still not a
Yeah.
case.
Yeah.
And essentially, here's the point. So the ICC is asking, do you have an investigation in the Philippines? It's no longer about unwilling or unable. Do you have an investigation? No. Into crimes against humanity? No. It's just talk. We have something that Senator De Lima has mentioned, several other people have mentioned.
Spokesperson Miko Clavano actually said that they are looking into investigating that systematic...
And the cold cases as well.
But like attorney is saying, looking into it is not enough.
Yeah.
It has to be actually happening in reality. Now, how does this reflect on Reina Garma? Because I was watching all day. She was again being grilled at around past 6 p.m. They brought out Edelberto Leonardo, who we've all been waiting for. But up until we aired, he didn't really he didn't back her up. So it wasn't what we expected. What were you hoping with that? No, with his appearance, were you expecting that he would back up the affidavit that Reina Garma had previously submitted?
To be candid, yes. We thought Colonel Leonardo had the guts to commit to the truth. At this point of the hearings, he had been barraged with a lot of questions already. He had been under a lot of stress, technically, because he's always on the stand. Lagi nga siyang hinahanap, saan ka na, nagtatago ka ba? But it was odd for me that he was evasive. He did not confirm the reward system. It might have been because even with the admission of Reina Garma, imagine her still being under investigation for the killings. So maybe from his point of view, he thinks that there's
Wala
no
naman
point.
akong makukuha.
Yeah, there's no point
It's not worth-
to
I'm not
admitting.
absolved.
Yeah, I'm not absolved. And I mean, I'm not. One thing is he might have been asking for immunity and it wasn't granted to him. Problem is he's asking the wrong persons. Kasi this is Congress. It's not the House of it's not DOJ. It's not the prosecutors. No, so these people might not have the full authority to broker a deal, kumbaga. So that's one thing. But on the other hand, grabe yung pagharap din ng mga victims eh. Parang hindi ko pa ba rin siya na tamaan sa panawagan ng mga biktima. But then anyway, even without that, what was alarming for us was that, so Duterte, who's been one name mentioned all throughout, turns out to have called Reina Garma after her testimony, explaining why the INC is, why a member of the INC is the best bet to have for this reward system. It's because the INC daw ay mapagkakatiwalaan sa pera.
Correct.
And that's troublesome for us because that's witness interference. Reina Garma being a possible witness at the ICC and any other future investigation, even domestic investigations, that could be considered as influencing
You
a
mean
witness.
the fact that former President Duterte called her while she's detained?
And she answered.
But then...
More of she answered.
Well, it's not the fact that she answered. Of course she would answer. But then who gave her the phone? Because she shouldn't have a phone while in detention, right?
Well, I technically I would say that in detention, she's being held for contempt.
Yes.
So it's not technically a punishment. So she's not a prisoner, kumbaga. So she would have a little bit
for instance, they took
privilege.
away all her gadgets.
Pero may kaso.
Yeah, may kaso kasi si Alice Guo, and then at this point she's a suspect in so many other cases. So for Reina Garma, it's more of she's a resource person. She's a witness to several things. She's under investigation for some things, but not yet charged with anything.
Let's come back to the ICC, and I asked Senator Trillanes this. What if the ICC never comes? Because the bigger context to this is, they don't have an army of prosecutors. And the same prosecutor who's looking into the Duterte drug war is the same one who's looking into the destruction of Gaza, right? He's got his plate full, to say the least. They can't even, there's been pressure on them to issue an arrest warrant against Benjamin Netanyahu, which they haven't done to this day. So again, conversely, what if they never come? What then?
Well, they have come. That's one. I mean, it's hard to confirm nor deny, again, because problem with that is that because it's an ongoing investigation, they have asked for it to be kept confidential. It's actually in the rules. Only upon the opening of trial of the case can you formally say that, yes, I am part of this trial, because it would afford you some protection. You can apply for witness protection or so. But right now, during investigation, something happens to you, the ICC cannot take care of you, and I mean, reasonably so. Now, what if the ICC trial never comes to fruition? One thing is the warrant of arrest actually is a minimum for us, because for Duterte or any of the other perpetrators of these crimes against humanity, the mere fact that they are internationally wanted criminals and that there is reasonable basis to believe that they committed crimes against humanity, it could be enough for some of the victims as a minimum, because recognition of your victimhood, that of this state policy, is already one step or one form of justice. So, minimum, liliit ang mundo nila. And for some, it could be punishment enough.
If the ICC finally releases warrants of arrest and also a conviction, are we still dependent on or is the ICC dependent on the cooperation of the Philippine government? Or can they work through the Interpol to enforce what has been decided on?
Well, bottom line, they need the Philippine government to cooperate. In the execution of the warrant, it really
Kahit
has
pa
to
Interpol.
be... Yes, the Interpol actually is not a separate police force. It's like parang liga. Hindi pupunta yung ibang team pupunta dito. No? They really need the police to enforce the warrant or to enforce any other orders. And then second, as to detention. Technically, if we were still a member, we could offer Bilibid as a detention facility for the convicted, but we lose that. So anyhow, it's not that we have other ways, but there are other ways of executing the warrant, but we have other ways of compelling the execution of the warrant. Extradition treaty could be an agreement, a request by another country. If you remember, Pemberton daw was released or taken in by the US in exchange for vaccines.
Yes.
So you don't know what kind of diplomatic solution there could be.
When you say the ICC have come, do I also take it to mean you're confident that the pretrial chamber will eventually issue an arrest order?
Yes, that's the only thing we can do, but hope for the best.
How are the victims? I mean, this is all about them from the start.
Yeah.
Are they happy? Like we said, dumiit na yung mundo nila kahit paano, di ba? We have kind of outed a lot of the system and etc. Are they okay with this, or are they still willing to see it through to the end, whatever happens?
Well, they're taking every day one step at a time. Iba-iba din sila ng definition ng justice. Yung iba gusto an eye for an eye. Yung iba makulong man lang. But at the minimum, the recognition and the respect that they have earned from the House of Representatives is emboldening them to come forward with their stories. And this hope, if before fear was the one that was contagious or more contagious, now it's hope that there's something at the end of the tunnel for them, whether it's Duterte in jail or Duterte and Bato in jail, and so on.
Well, Executive Secretary Lucas Bersamin said that the Philippines will not be rejoining the ICC. Was that a definitive statement? Did the government change its tune there somehow? Or was that, just something that he said in passing?
It could have been said in passing. One, you never say never. In this administration, they flip-flopped on many issues and many statements. And secondly, rejoining the ICC is a different thing altogether from cooperating with the existing investigation. So actually, whether we rejoin or not, this investigation into the war on drugs of Duterte must and should continue, and we must cooperate with it.
As what former Senator Laila de Lima pointed out, there is an existing law that says we have to participate. We're going to have to leave that there. We thank you so much for your time tonight. That was ICC Assistant to Counsel Attorney Kristine.
Out at sea, but its cloud bands are so wide that several provinces have been hit by torrential rains. The center of the tropical storm was estimated at 399 km east of Daet in Camarines Norte, and it is packing maximum sustained winds of 75 km/h near the center with gustiness of up to 90 km per hour. The storm is moving west-northwestward and is forecast to make landfall in northern Luzon. But as we can see in this satellite image, Kristine's cloud bands have been dumping heavy rains across the Bicol region and parts of Samar and Leyte today. In Samar, floods have hit roads and low-lying areas. And in Bicol, this river in Sorsogon has overflowed. Chest-deep floods have also hit several areas in Naga City. Heavy rains have also resulted in flash floods in Albay.
Meanwhile, the Office of Civil Defense has activated the Charlie Protocol, the highest level of emergency preparedness in 7 regions in response to the potential impacts of Tropical Storm Kristine. This means that preemptive and even forced evacuation may be implemented in areas classified as Charlie, along with mobilization of rapid response teams.
Kahapon pa naka-red alert na yung ating Emergency Operation Center sa Bicol dahil doon nga siya malapit halos buong Bicol, halos buong Eastern Visayas at saka portion ng Mindanao kahapon. At ngayon lalong lumawak ay complemented by other regions kagaya ng Cordillera, ng Region 2 sa Cagayan Valley, Region 3 sa Mimaropa at saka yung nasa Region 5.
As Tropical Storm Kristine continues to head towards northern Luzon, Interior Secretary John Vic Remulla has recommended the suspension of classes in Luzon tomorrow.
We advised all local government units to suspend classes in the entire Luzon seaboard. Buong Luzon yan. Again, hindi tayo sigurado, public and private, hindi tayo sigurado kung aakyat siya papuntang Quirino, exiting through, ano yung Edge Island sa atin na babuyod dati? Batanes. So we don't know yet the exact path kung dadaan siya from Quezon to Aurora to Batanes or it will go from Quezon straight to the Cordilleras out to So we will know tonight kung ano talagang final trajectory ng typhoon.
Manibela Chair Mar Valbuena is one of 66 candidates for senator at next year's midterm elections. He says if elected, he will work on issues surrounding the Public Utility Vehicle Modernization Program. Let's dig into that a little bit more. We have with us here tonight, senatorial aspirant Mar Valbuena. Welcome back to The Big Story.
Good evening and thank you for having us.
Suspended po ang klase bukas. Oo. Ang pasada.
Hindi po. Wala pong...
May pasada bukas.
May pasada bukas at sinisiguro namin na may masasakyan po bukas.
Okay. The latest update on the PUV modernization program, 22 out of 23 senators have asked government to suspend the program, to slow it down, to review loopholes. Is this a win for Manibela?
Of course.
What is the status of the PUV modernization program?
Sa ngayon, parang status quo kami kasi hindi naman in-honor ng executive department yung ating Senate resolution na sinususpend yung implementation ng PUBMP. So, para sa amin, nakikita natin na yung mga loopholes na to kaya nga piniprenohan yung programa kasi may halong korupsyon at nahihirapan yung mga cooperatives at ayaw na nga magpautang ng DBP and Land Bank. So dapat yung mga ayaw na makapag-consolidate, uulitin namin, hindi kami against sa modernization, against kami doon sa consolidation ng aming mga franchises.
Katunayan, no, Mar, actually, binuksan ulit ng LTFRB itong consolidation period hanggang November 29, 45 days.
45 days,
How do you
parang
feel
manok.
anong tingin nyo doon?
Alam nyo, nagpapakita lang ito, nagpapatunay lamang po ito na yung programa, yung consolidation, palpak talaga. At sinasabi nila na yung datos nila 83%, bakit kailangan mo pang buksan yung consolidation kung more than enough na yung 83% na sinasabi nila? Panlilin lang po ito doon sa ating presidente na sinasabi nila, kaya nag-decide ang ating presidente na ituloy ito, wag isuspend dahil nga na-reach na nila yung kinakailangang datos ng mga jeepney at UB Express na nag-consolidate. Pero bakit ngayon binuksan ulit?
You're running for Senate, so what specific legislation do you want to push if elected? Clearly, your platform is transport. So, what specific legislation?
Unang-una, ma'am, yung Ma'am Regine, yung katiyakan dun sa hanap buhay, sa aming kabuhayan, sa lahat ng mamamayang Pilipino, hindi lamang sa mga jeepney drivers at operators. Unang-una yon. Kasi wala na ngang maibigay ang ating gobyerno na maayos na trabaho sa kanyang mamamayan bukod sa ayuda na ginagawang mangmang at parang wala nang pupuntahan yung ating mga kababayan. Pangalawa, food security sa agriculture. So itong pinasok namin na dapat nasa party list lamang kami at yung sector lamang, nakakalungkot na hindi kami inapprove ng COMELEC despite na kumpleto kami ng requirements na kinakailangang isubmit sa kanila.
Bakit nga po ba?
Nagbigay
po silang paliwanag?
Wala kaming resolution na nakuha doon sa ipinail naming petition for accreditation. Ako mismo umakyat sa COMELEC, pero ang sagot lang sa akin, yun na daw yun. So,
May para sa konteksto, no, para maintindihan natin ng viewers, ito yung pag-apply ninyo for accreditation sa Manibela party list. Manibela as a party list.
Yes, ma'am. At yun nga, nakakalungkot na hindi tayo nakakuha ng accreditation para makapag-file ng CONA bilang party list system.
Pero yun na nga, no? At umabot na tayo sa today, no, Mar, na andyan ka nga, tatakbo ka. At syempre isusulong mo, of course, transport-related legislature. Pero nandyan din po yung kasangganin nyo, no, sa paglaban or pagtutol sa PTMP o PUVMP na from Piston naman. Diba? Si Sir Modi Floranda, tatakbo na rin po sa Senado. Hindi ba kayo nag-usap before na parang, or dapat ba ikaw yung sa lower house, siya yung sa upper house? Kasi kasama po siya sa Makabayan Block. Diba?
Dapat po ganon. Dapat po ganon na kung na-approve yung accreditation namin for party list, dapat sa party list, sa lower house
sa
dapat po ako.
Kongreso po kayo.
Tatakbo.
Si Sir Modi naman sa Senado.
Sa Senado.
Ngayon, nakausap namin si dating governor ng Ilocos, si Chavit Singson. Hindi ko alam kung napanood nyo, pero
Napanood ko po.
Oo, nabanggit niya rin kasi na isa rin to sa isang tututukan niya. May mga nabanggit din siya, no, yung presyo ng mga modernized units, etc. na napakamahal. Wala bang nagbago sa sa pananaw nyo? Or since lumipas na rin ang panahon, wala bang lumabas o lumitaw na mas murang supplier?
Marami na po kaming ipinakita na gawa dito sa atin na mga jeepneys, mura, matibay, na panatili natin yung kultura. And hindi kinakailangan na magtaas ng pamasahe. Pero bakit ito hindi tinitignan ng DOTR, ng LTFRB, ng gobyerno para tulungan sana na magkaroon tayo ng industriya? Gamitin natin yung sovereign wealth fund natin. Magkaroon ng industriya dito. Kapag kumita, pwede pa nga nating i-recapitalize ito eh. Di ba? Bakit hindi ito yung ginagawa ng gobyerno?
Sorry, I have to correct you there. The LTFRB says they have talked to local manufacturers. May mga nakausap that they, talk to a lot of manufacturers, some of them local. So it's not right to say na hindi nila kinausap yung local manufacturers.
Iba po yung kinausap doon sa ginagawa talaga. Nakakita na po ba tayo na isang kooperatiba man lang na merong 15 units, isang fleet na modernized, na traditional jeepney talaga? Wala po. Wala ni isa na kooperatiba o korporasyon na pinayagan o nakakuha nito, kundi lahat galing sa foreign. Sila yung pinapayaman natin, yung mga banyaga ang pinapayaman natin na sumasakop sa atin na hindi nga na malabanan ng gobyerno. Tapos sila, yung mga kababayan natin, walang trabaho, na dapat kung may industriya tayo dito, nandito lahat yung mga raw materials na kinakailangan natin para makabuo tayo ng industriya ng mga jeepneys o ng mga vehicles na yan. Pero bakit hindi ito ang sinusuportahan ng gobyerno? Kaya tayo nandito ngayon.
Hindi po ba yung Francisco Motors ay sabi nila gumagawa na sila ng mga unit? At nag-viral pa nga ito eh. Marami na actually mga local manufacturers nagva-viral.
Like
bakit hindi
Sarao.
po yun ang i-avail ng mga
Kasamahan po namin. Actually, wala ni napayagan doon sa kanila. To make it clear, kung meron, sana may nakikita na tayo na talagang nag-a-acquire ng mga cooperatives.
Walang na-approve?
Wala naman pong na-approve
Sabi
and
nila
wala ding siyang
parang
wala ding
sa subsidize, kumbaga parang gagawin nilang murang-mura yung presyo nito.
Actually, medyo ganun din nga yung sinabi ni dating Governor Chavit. Nabanggit din yan na parang kakaunti lang daw yung naaprubahan.
Actually,
sa pagkakaalam nyo, Sir Mar, ilan po ba ang supplier na accredited?
na Pilipino po,
Na
Pinoy,
Pilipino.
wala po akong kilala na na-accredit, kundi ho yung mga minibus po na itsura ang in-accredit lang ng
Nakausap niyo po
LTFRB.
itong Francisco Motors?
Lagi po kami magkasama ni Mr. Elmer Francisco ng Francisco Motors. Ultimo, yung Board of Investment na dapat ito yung tutulong doon sa mga local manufacturers natin. Nasaan kayo?
Tama ba intindi ko na nag-bid sila pero hindi sila, kumbaga, pumasa? May ganun. Or umabot ba man lang ba sa bidding?
Alam nyo, masakit na sabihin na more than 70 years na itong mga local manufacturers natin, ni isa walang na-approve. Bakit? Bakit?
Sa tingin nyo
We
bakit?
will we'll ask LTFRB and DOTR that kasi hindi namin ma-confirm if it's true na walang local manufacturers. I'm sure they have their reasons. But anyway, I want to come back to your senatorial platform. You said job creation tsaka food security. Yung number one, what specific legislation, because I didn't get specifics, what specific legislation do you want to make around ensuring jobs for every Filipino? Because you understand na it's mostly the private sector who creates jobs in this country. So paano natin i-legislate yun?
Unang-una, yung sa sektor po namin, sa hanay namin, walang job security talaga eh. Kasi on and off. So, akyat baba yung mga drivers. And then, kapag umabot na sila doon sa retirement age din nila, hindi din nako-compensate. Ito yung mga kasamahan natin na umabot na doon sa 60 years old, hindi na kaya. Pero pinipilit pa dahil wala naman mapuntahan at wala din naman silang makukuhang benepisyo. Ito po yung isang isusulong natin. Hindi lamang sa mga jeepney drivers, operators, sana sa lahat po ng
So, tataas natin
manggagawa.
yung retirement age?
Hindi.
Is that correct?
At least lang yung katiyakan po doon sa kabuhayan na
Paano?
hindi
But
po
how nga?
katulad
But
namin,
anong specific
katulad
law
namin,
nga?
wala na kayo, hindi na kayo pwedeng bumiyahe, hindi na kayo pwedeng pumasada. Wala pong katiyakan doon sa hanap buhay.
No,
po namin.
I understand the problem, but what specific law will solve that? Like, what will this law do?
ano pong batas ang nasa
Ay,
isipan
isip
ninyo,
ninyo,
no?
yung specific na
Kasi pag
makasolve.
senador, hindi tinanong din namin kay Willie Revillame yun, no?
Opo,
Anong ipapanukala ninyo?
Gusto natin ipanukala na magkaroon nga ng job security doon sa ating mga informal
Pero paano po?
na magpapile
ano
tayo
pong
ng mga bills na para aakma doon sa mga, lalo na doon sa mga nasa informal sectors.
Meaning nga, so parang ano rin to, end-endo. Party ba yun? Ng
Dapat
inyong,
hindi na po dapat.
Yun nga lang yung mga, kasi kumbaga yung mga jeepney driver, kanya-kanya yan, yung unit mo, yan ang negosyo mo. Para kang freelancer o negosyante. Sino magbabayad ng benepisyo nila? O kaya retirement nila?
May mga benepisyo po tayo na katulad ng SSS, PhilHealth. Kahit po hindi kami sumama sa kooperatiba, pwede po natin gawin 'yon na individual po na mag-a-apply. Hindi naman kinakailangan na employed ka.
Opo, pero yun nga, meron naman kung naguhulog ka.
O kung naghuhulog po, kasama po
Pero
yung operator.
responsibilidad po yun, di ba, ng individual na
Opo.
siyang maghulog sa SSS.
Opo, pero at the end of the day, may makukuha tayo. Pero bukod doon, yung gusto nating i-legislate talaga na magkaroon ng katiyakan sa hanap buhay, kabuhayan ng ating mga, hindi lang ng transport sector, kundi yung mga sinasabi nilang endo, ayaw na natin ito. Gusto nating tapusin din yung endo na to, na magkaroon ng ma-regular lahat ng mga empleyado at nang sa ganon, may katiyakan sila doon sa kanilang kabuhayan.
Sabi ng mga businesses, they can't afford to regularize all of the workers kasi nga that's malaking gastos din yon, right?
at baka nga mas marami pang mawalan ng trabaho.
Naiintindihan natin na malaking gastos, pero tignan din natin ano ba kinikita nitong mga malalaking kumpanya na to. Kaya ba nila? Hindi ba nila kaya? Isipin mo, bilyon-bilyon ang kinikita nila sa mamamayang Pilipino, pero hindi nila ma-regularize yung kanilang mga empleyado.
Yun nga lang, hindi naman po,
Kung hindi man
karamihan ay
lahat,
malalaking, mas maraming MSMEs actually sa Pilipinas ay yung medium to small enterprises. Ay, hindi lahat yon ay may kapasidad na mag-hire ng full-time, na mag-regular ng kanilang mga empleyado. Hindi naman sa pinagtatanggol po, pero yung viability of the business model could be affected with that. Nakikita niyo rin po ba yung kabilang, kasi kumbaga sa solution, yung may kabilang side din.
nakikita natin na yung kabilang side nito na apektado yung ating mga SMSE na sasabihin, maliit lang kinikita namin, maliit lang yung puhunan namin, pero paano pag lumalaki na to? Diba? So dapat makita din natin na magkabilang side. Siguro may mga guidelines din, IRR na kailangang ilabas para doon sa mga ganong klase
protect the
ng
workers.
Yes.
Okay. Pero bago magyari lahat to, no, kailangan mo nang manalo, no, Mar? Naisip ko na lang bigla. Since dalawa kayo ng piston, no? Andiyan kayo, Manibela, andiyan ng piston, both going for the Senate, di ba kayo natakot na baka mahati ang mga boto?
Unang-una lang, kaya po ako pumasok talaga para lang wag mapag-iwanan yung issue at maipagtanggol namin yung aming karapatan dito sa kabuhayan namin. Kasi mahaba-haba po ito, pero overwhelming kasi after ko mag-speech, hindi ko maintindihan yung ambience doon sa loob ng Manila Hotel na yung pag-speech natin, binitawan nating mga salita. Bakit ganun yung pagtanggap ng mga tao? Kaya niyakap ko na rin siya. Sabi ko, gusto nating manalo, gusto nating ipanalo yung mga mamamayang Pilipino, hindi po tayo.
Okay.
So, to have a platform for your advocacies to be heard. Ayan po ang nagtulak sa inyo para tumakbo. Okay.
Tama po.
Maraming salamat for joining us tonight on The Big Story, and thank you for updating us with what's been happening on the ground. That was Mar Valbuena of Manibela, senatorial aspirant.
And of course, before our chat with Mar Valbuena, we were talking about the weather. Kristine is still here, and our big picture tonight is still related to the storm. Because All Saints Day and All Souls Day are both just around the corner, but for the dead, over at the Holy Spirit Memorial Park in Pampanga, it may be just a bit harder for their relatives to visit them. Tombs at that cemetery are still submerged in floodwaters due to the recent rains. And with the threat of more rain due to Tropical Storm Kristine coming this week, the water may take even longer to subside. Now, flooding has been a problem in Pampanga and Bulacan, but it has affected more cemeteries in the last couple of years.
That's a good reminder for the upcoming holidays. Yes.
Okay, on that note, we have run out of time. That's it for the show tonight.
We are One News.